Well, Friday night, we're on schedule.
Friday night, we're pretty good tonight. This is good.
Yeah,
Marie, my wife, she asked me earlier, she's like, "You got a date with John tonight?" And I said, "Absolutely, I do. It's
there you
Friday
go.
night."
My wife's
um,
out of town and so I'm available.
there you go.
Mhm.
Wonderful. So tonight, we're going to kind of get right at it, and we're going to start talking about a study, but we're also going to just talk about warming up, in particular for athletics. And I know we've talked about warming up before, and I want to just kind of start out thinking about this. So, back in, I don't know, 1990, no, way before that, 88, 89, I took my first coaching course, and it was in ski racing coaching. And I can still remember like the section on warming up and
Hmm.
the validity of it and the importance of it. And, you know, spend a lot of time like learning proper warm-ups for ski racing. And then in my orienteering career, going to coaching camps and high level camps, always the emphasis was on warming up. Then I started working in soccer and doing performance training for soccer players. And I had every team I worked with, they had to do it like almost a 20-minute warm up for every practice. And I know the kids didn't always like it, but man, it really worked. And the kids didn't get hurt and performance was good. Then I fast forward to the endurance world, and I rarely see age group athletes warm up. And I'm not saying for races. I see some do it for races, but not very many. Uh, for us at our races, oftentimes the warm up is, oh shoot, I'm late, run to the lake,
Hmm.
right? But even, and we've talked about this before, like swim practice, rarely see people warm up. Uh, Running groups that I've been in, there might be a few little quick stretches, but
Hmm.
maybe not. So, John, obviously you've been in the business longer than I have. Is there something that has changed in or changes as we get older that we don't want to warm up?
Well,
Or we,
warm-up's not very exciting.
yep,
It's slow. It takes patience. And a lot of us, as we get older, we don't have that patience. We want to get going and we're time is tight. Uh,
and no one's telling us what to do, right? Like
yeah,
when you're a kid and you're playing soccer, you got a coach that's sitting there and saying, "Hey, warm up."
yeah. Every coached team, you have a warm up. I mean, you do. And so, going through soccer, going through swimming, high school, collegiate, you always have a warm up.
Yep.
It's not always explained why you're doing a warm up,
Right.
and sometimes it's goof off time, just getting in and seeing your friends and doing what you're doing, and but it does serve a purpose, and I think you're right when you go to when I get out of collegiate athletics and started going to races, either running races or triathlons, very few people warm up, even in a running race.
Yep.
Now, I would take that the top runners do a
Oh,
warm,
they're doing long warm ups.
yeah, and but the age groupers may not do a warm up, and they get to the start line and get in a group and the gun goes off. It's so it is something that I think people move away from, but it does have an important role in racing. I discovered even though all the warm ups I did with team sports, I finally learned to warm up at a 5K. And then you have to learn how much warm up you want
Yep.
in order to race well, versus doing too much and then not having too little or too much. And so there is a magic window that you can shoot for warm up. But in triathlon, it's a little less practical to warm up given the swim, bike, and run. And often where the swim is located, and there may not be an opportunity to swim, and how the swim start is, and so forth. But that is why I often talk with triathletes, especially use that first part of the swim segment you got to treat that as a warm up. You don't just jump in and start sprinting.
But still, I would say most don't, right? But at least what I see in people's like their
Yeah.
files when I look at it afterwards,
Hmm.
the first 200 of their swims usually the fastest.
Yeah. And I think that was even more the rage, actually. And that was some of the common advice is to go out fast in the swim when it was a mass start
Yeah.
type swim. because it was like, you got to get out in front of the group, you got to get to that first buoy and swim as hard as you can. And that ends up being terrible advice. And I think I don't hear many people giving that advice so much, but the tendency, the gun goes off, you want to just start racing. And so it does have to take, I think it does take a purposeful mindset at the start to force yourself to warm up in the swim.
Yeah. I would contend that racing is different than training as well, right? Especially a long distance race. I could see, once again, like if I'm doing a 5-hour half or a 10, 12, 14-hour Ironman, maybe I don't want to warm up, and I could actually, that might be the best way to do it, is actually do it in the swim, because it's a long day and I don't want to be like burning out energy that I don't have. But speaking specifically of training, I think that's where the bang for the buck comes in. And if you use your warm up and do your warm up in a way that actually promotes good technique. So, like, for example, in swimming, the warm up doesn't have to be out on dry land, right? It could be doing drills. It could be doing very specific, thoughtful, technical swimming. Right. Where, hey, for this first 200, 300, 400, I'm going to really concentrate on a high elbow catch, but doing it slow where you really are thinking about technique. That can be a warm up. Or even in a run, it's like, okay, I'm going to start out really slow on my run, and I'm really going to, whatever I'm working on, if I'm working my feet position just a little bit wider, I want to increase my cadence, or whatever the case may be, standing tall, relaxed, whatever the cue you have is, I think that's one thing to do. But then we do have, once again, in running, there's a lot of really good run specific drills that you can do to warm up. And the other thing I'm going to add is, as I get older, I feel like I need it more. Like, I think when I was a kid, I'm like, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm elastic, I'm good, right? I mean, I don't know about, I do know about you. Getting out of bed in the morning is rough.
Yeah.
Right? We're stiff. The training from the day before, we're I'm slow getting out of bed. And once I get going, I feel better. And then if I'm going to exercise, if I do a really good warm up, in my runs now, I'm doing 10 to 15 minutes of warming up. Very direct stuff. I've been running a lot with Cosmo, which is great. And there's a little piece of artificial turf about a quarter mile from my house. And that's where we go now. And I tie him up there. He knows that it's warm up time, and he sits down. He doesn't really warm up. And I go through my warm up protocol, and then I go and run. And I feel so much better when I do it. That first 2-3 miles it seems just so much easier for me. And even on the bike, I've been starting to do it. Very specific warm up exercises. And they're on the bike, right? It's not like I'm sitting doing calisthenics. There are specific drills on the bike. We've talked about some stuff before, like the one-legged cycling and some coordination stuff on the bike. So I just find it really, once again, really odd that as we get older, where I think we need warm up more, we do it less.
Well, I think part of it also is my warm up is my entire run. So, it is, we are slowing down as we get older. And I think that is a tendency to say, well, your warm up has to be slower than what you want to run. And if you're already running pretty slow, like I am right now, it's a little harder. But again, I think it's a mentality of time, and you can't, depending on what you're logging in Strava, does your warm up get logged? Does it get counted as time?
No, I don't start my watch because I don't want to. I don't want to post that I'm moving that slow.
And this is where we've talked about this before. This is where some of the technology can actually work against us. If it's not in Strava, it doesn't count, right? And so it is sometimes a mentality that you're ready to go run. You have a window to be able to go and run. You don't want to use that time warming up. You want to get right into it. But the fact is that longevity in the sport is all built around this graduation from non-exercising to exercising, even on a single session.
So I know we've talked about it before, and I'm kind of surprising you with this because I didn't tell you we were going to talk about this tonight. But I know you teach this in your physiology of endurance class. So just off the top of your head, what are the benefits, the physiologic benefits of warming up?
Well, circulation first and foremost, especially if you're going from, lying down, waking up and wanting to go for a run, you're going from a horizontal position and now you're in a vertical position. You've got to get things flowing. And that is part of the warm up, is starting to take the heart rate from a resting level and to start just gradually increase that heart rate. And by increasing the heart rate, you're increasing the circulation. Then you're getting more venous flow back into the heart, and then the heart is starting to function as effectively as it can. And so really circulation is one of the key things. The other is temperature. It's a warm up because it's a warm up. And why are you warming up? Well, it's because when muscle contracts, it's transforming chemical energy to mechanical energy, and that transformation is never one for one. In fact, only about 25-30% of the chemical energy gets to movement. The other energy goes to heat. And so by contracting the muscles, you're starting to generate more heat, you're starting to warm up, which also will aid with things like circulation.
So I love what you just talked about the heat side. So one of the things that I can think of, like, this was many years ago, someone taught me this, and they said, okay, think about your tendons in particular and your muscles as elastic bands.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what would happen if you take an elastic band and you put it in the freezer and then try to pull it? It'll break. It's cold. If you take that elastic band and you put it in some warm water and pull it, it actually will stretch further and stretch easier. And ultimately, what we're doing when we're exercising is we're really a lot, especially running, is that there's a lot of an elastic component to running. Yeah. Viscoelasticity, right? And if we are starting to run on tendons that aren't warmed up very well, we potentially could be doing damage to them. So I think that there's that. And then I think there's also a piece of just the energy systems and getting the energy systems going. And not just, you mentioned blood flow, but actually, where does the blood flow go, and driving blood flow to the cells in the muscle, right? Then there's also the neurologic side. So the neurologic system also, there's a warm-up period of the neurologic system that also occurs. So I think that there's definitely benefits to it. And once again, I don't want to tell people like what to do, but we will. Right. My advice to people is to spend, if you got an hour to run, even if it's 5 minutes of warming up, I really think you're better off, bang for your buck, 5 minutes warm up, then run 55 minutes, than 60 minutes of running without a warm up. That's my advice to people all the time. The bang for the buck is so much greater if you do that.
Well, I'll add, what people can do is they can start off for the run, just run slow. And then when you start feeling good, look at your watch and see how long that is.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's going to be the time that you need really to warm up. And, I said before, that's how I discovered, my warm up was I started paying attention in my runs that after about 20 minutes, I felt really good and I could really push the pace. I wasn't doing it intentionally. It was just sort of, me being young and I'm just going to go for a run. And I looked out, whoa, 20 minutes. I'm really snapping now.
Yeah.
And so then I started working in a long, slow 20-minute run before races. And that really was a key to some of my running. And the point that you said on the elastic material muscle, that's so important. In fact, the paper that you found for us to read for tonight actually talked about this. And what's interesting is a lot of people think when we run that we have this huge eccentric pulling of the muscle and then it contracts. And in fact, what actually is happening with most muscles during running, most of the time, not always, is that they're contracting just enough to put enough tension on the elastic part of the muscle tendon unit. So then it behaves elastic as best elastic as possible. And if you can get spring energy out of your muscle tendon, that comes almost like free energy.
It truly is free energy. And And if you think about, even if we add the next piece of like the chemical side to mechanical,
Mhm.
we're using less chemical.
Yeah, right. But and all the muscle's doing then, it's putting the right tension
Yep.
on the tendon so that it behaves a certain way.
Yep.
And so that's where the muscle contraction does come in, is just putting the right tension on the tendon, as
Yep.
opposed to just having a tendon just with no sort of actuator or so. So
It would be really interesting to think of if our muscles didn't have an elastic component to them, how much energy would actually take to move. It'd be exponentially more energy.
oh yeah, oh I see where we're going. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If,
Mhm.
if, if, if these things truly were like a
Yeah.
mechanical thing where
Oh
there
yeah.
was an elastic component. And I think you see this, and this is going off on a little tangent, but there's a race coming up in, I don't know if you've heard about this. There's a race coming up in China
Hmm.
where it's man versus machine. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
heard of this, where there's basically, they're going to, I think it's a 10K, and there's a competition for robotics against humans. But when you watch a robot run, if there's not an elastic component to it, there's a lot of energy that
Yeah.
goes into actually moving it.
Hmm.
And one of the things was they were trying to figure out is like how to do battery changes. So these things can't
Hmm.
even do 10K without a battery change.
Hmm.
And most of the designs have no elastic component to it,
Yeah.
right? And thinking about the elastic side of it, I think is really an interesting thing. And yes, we're going to get into this paper, but really the more elastic you are, especially running, and even I think to a certain extent swimming, the better off you're going to be, the less energy you're going to use to propel yourself. So yeah, for our listeners, look up that race. I think it's this weekend.
Yeah, yeah, I'll check it out. That sounds interesting. And yeah, I think the paper we read, they do talk about the Achilles tendon can be contribute 80% of some of the energy that you need for propelling forward. So it's substantial. It is.
Okay, so the paper is called Progressive Daily Hopping Exercise Improves Running Economy in Amateur Runners, a randomized and controlled trial. This was in
Nature. Hmm.
Nature, which pretty high level journal,
Yep.
right? And it's from 2023, so it's very very recent. So, John, do you want to kind of give us an overview of the paper?
Well, no, you go ahead, but I love this topic because it's in essence saying an activity that's not running will help running.
Yeah.
And this is really a cool look at some plyometrics
Yeah.
and how that can influence running economy. And it really speaks to what we use a lot is that minimum effective dose. So,
And I love this minimum effective dose talk,
yeah.
right? Because first of all, the intervention, which is kind of like the sexy part of a study,
Hmm.
is hopping, and it's progressive, like 2 foot hopping um, for 5 minutes a day
Yep.
for 6 weeks. That's not a lot of time,
Hmm.
right? Like, once again, I'd rather probably do a program like this if I could do 5 minutes less of swim, bike, run a day,
Hmm.
and add this to see what the actual benefits and the gains potentially are, which were quite significant.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's pretty remarkable. So basically, we said it's a progressive hopping program. So every week you do 5 minutes of hopping. Actually, it's not even 5 minutes of hopping. We'll actually get into exactly what you do, but every week you're going to do more hopping. So first week is, I'm actually doing it right now, and I know a lot of people that I coach, they're on this, they listen. So the first week is you do this every day. You do 10 seconds of hopping with 50 seconds rest,
Hmm.
and you repeat 5 times. So that takes that goes to 60 minutes, and then
And you're supposed to jump as high as possible each time.
as high as possible, but without bending your knees.
Yeah.
So basically, it's all coming from your calf.
Right.
Right. So really, what we're doing is we're trying to turn our Achilles tendon into a spring, or train it to be more spring-like. Is basically what we're trying to accomplish here. So then, subsequent weeks, you still do the same amount of time, you just jump longer.
Hmm.
So every week it gains a little bit. So I think the second week is 15 seconds of hopping and then 45 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think it's to 20 and then 40 seconds of break or rest. I think the last 2 weeks it's You actually hop for 50 seconds and you get 10 seconds break.
Yeah.
But the whole idea is, and this is the other thing I love, and we've talked a lot about this, is progressive loading.
Yeah.
And so slowly adding this in over time. And to be honest with you, I think most triathletes can do week one, right? 10 seconds hopping 5 times with a break.
Yeah. Sorry.
I don't know how many, once again, would be able to do it safely at the week 6 volume at week 1. And so the idea is to safely bring in the load over time. And then I would even say that if somebody had a lot of like injury history or whatever, you could progress this longer, go 8 weeks, go 12 weeks or whatever. So basically they had a group that did that and they had a group that didn't do it. And everybody basically did their same normal training on top of this.
Yeah. And just to emphasize the progressive part, they're in essence doing about 1 minute the first week, under 1 minute, and then under 3 minutes by week 6. So that it's not a lot. And it's, it is a progression all the way through, but even, adding 3 minutes of hopping, it's not a breaker on your schedule in the day.
It's not a breaker in your schedule. And so for me, I've started it this week as well. And I'm just doing it before I exercise. Bike or run, like just the first exercise of the day. This goes into the warm up. I rode today, and before I got on the bike, I'm like, okay, do my hopping.
Yeah.
It's once again, it's simple. It's 5 minutes, right? And then during the rest time, I don't just rest. I'm like, oh, set my bike up, set this, go grab my water bottle, like because it's 10 seconds. It doesn't have to be 10 seconds, or the rest time doesn't have to be sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah.
It actually can be something during that. So once again, super low time commitment, which you and I, once again, we always talk about is like, bang for your buck, lowest effective dose. This seems like a really low dose.
Yeah.
So before we get into the results, John, when you started to think about this dosage, we talked about this last week, and you said, did you read this study? And you were talking about something very similar, where it didn't take very much to actually cause
that's right. No, that minimum effective dose concept, I think, is really important. Is that and what's amazing is how small sometimes the dose needs to be, depending on what you're trying to get out of it. And I think that's why when I looked at this paper, I said, "Oh, this is perfect," because this is a really minimum effective dose. And this is very similar to some of the bone study work that I looked at before, and it was referring to is that it was really within the first few steps or hops or lands that that was enough stimulus for a positive bone growth.
Yeah,
and
which
so
I
this
think
is interesting.
Is the other side of this. And this paper didn't talk much about that, but there is evidence in the literature that doing plyometric type activities does increase bone density.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe we're actually getting even more bang for our buck. Maybe it'll help us run faster.
Right.
But even if it didn't,
well,
let's say I stimulated a little bit more bone density, that would be a win.
And I think what's important for people to also hear is that once you go past that minimum effective dose, that doesn't mean you still can't get additional gains.
Right.
But you're going to start getting smaller gains as you start going further away from that point. And so at some point, hopping for 3 hours, you're well beyond a training stimulus. And that is not time well spent. And so this is where you do start to make a decision. Okay, well, at what point am I just doing it for the sake of doing it? And
so my plan with this is to do the 6 weeks,
and
then on just run days, I'm going to continue to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I can hold it, right?
Yeah.
So I think once I get to the point where I've built up enough, I just don't want to lose it. And so that's the other thing is some of these gains you can make, you kind of titrate up and then you can hold. And yeah, I think that would be advantageous. Okay. So when we looked at this, and just so you know that the testing was done on different speeds, and showing what we're looking for was running economy. So John, you want to talk really quickly, give us the elevator on running economy, how we measure
so running economy is like efficiency. It's like how well you're running physiologically. And if I'm running at 10 miles per hour with a certain rate of oxygen consumption, and then I train and then I run that 10 miles per hour, I would be using less oxygen. I'd be using less calories to run that same speed. And so I would be more economical if I'm using less oxygen or if I'm using less calories.
Yeah, exactly. So we've talked a little bit about this. We talked a lot about running economy.
Yep.
I mean, a long time ago, we talked about just changing shoes can change your running economy. Relaxing while you're running can change your running economy. Making changes while running tends to actually make your running economy worse. Right. But the intervention was just doing this program and then looking at running economy. And what they ended up doing was looking at 3 different speeds. So you did the program, and then after you did the program,
Yep.
they did basically a before and after. And they looked at 3 different speeds. So 10 kilometers an hour. So that's a 60-minute 10K, right? Yep, 10 kilometers an hour. 12 kilometers an hour. That's about what is that? Is that a 50-minute 10K?
Yep.
Yep. And 14 kilometers an hour, that's getting close to a 40-minute 10K.
Yeah.
So just to put it into perspective. Now, the thing that was interesting to me was the faster you went, the more bang for your buck you got.
Right.
And so the 10 minutes, 10 kilometers per hour group, statistically, there wasn't a change. It was close enough that statistically there wasn't a change. If you look at the pure numbers, maybe there was a little bit of a change, but not statistically significant.
No.
But at 12 and 14, there was. And I'm thinking about the age groupers that I know and that I work with. A lot of them are in that kind of pace between that 50-minute and 40-minute 10K time. Because I think if you looked at age groupers in triathlon, a lot of them, that's the paces they're running at.
Yeah.
Some are a bit slower, right? But I think that there's a possibility here that we could actually have quite a good effect at those higher paces, which makes sense because the faster you go, the more spring you're basically trying to get out of the system.
Yeah, and I think that the results are pretty cool. And even backing up just a little bit of running economy, that is a better predictor of endurance performance than your VO2 peak or VO2 max, whichever way you want to look at it. And this paper sort of proves that point.
Yeah.
But what's interesting here is they all ran the same speeds pre and post the intervention. Right. So it's not like this was not a measure of performance.
Nope.
But when measuring running economy at the faster speeds, as you said, the ones that did the hopping had a lower rate of oxygen consumption. They used less calories to cover or to run at that speed. So the idea being, one, either you can run further or you could actually run faster at the pre-VO2. That's the idea, is that you would actually have a performance benefit here. So when we see a paper like this, when we see running economy improve for a given speed, that means we interpret that as an improved performance. What's interesting is VO2 max, VO2 peak. We use peak, which is fine. I actually like that better than VO2 max. But in any case, the maximum rate of oxygen consumption pre and post, no difference.
No difference.
Yeah.
And that's the coolest. I think actually that's one of the coolest parts of the study.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't get fitter. Like as far as
what we don't know, we don't know all the details of the test. And so you're spot on. The VO2 peak. What we don't know, and I wish they reported this, did they go an extra stage in the test?
Oh, that's true.
And still hit the same VO2 peak, but now they are running faster at VO2 peak. Running the speed that you're running at for VO2 peak for a given test, that can actually be a good predictor of endurance performance. So that was one piece that if I reviewed this paper, I would have said, hey, can you sneak in what the speed was that and I missed it if they put it in there, but that would have been a really neat piece of information here. Is that, but VO2 peak, the physiology didn't change.
Yeah.
But the running economy at those submax paces got better.
So John, if you just know what we've known now, and I know you've read the paper, and there is and we've talked about this before, there's a very strong correlation between running economy and heart rate.
Oh, yeah. Heart rate. Yeah. I don't think you have any heart rate
They
data.
have no heart rate data here.
Yeah.
But we know this. We've done enough VO2
Mhm.
tests in our time that when running
Yeah.
economy or VO2, not a VO2 max, but VO2 goes basically down, heart rate will go down.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing these people, especially at the faster rate, let's hypothetically say their first test, they could have been at a 170 heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
The second test at the same speed, they may have been at a 160.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for those of us that have raced enough and know our heart rates, going maybe hypothetically 10 beats
Yeah.
lower for the
Mm-hmm.
same pace, man, that's to me, that's winning. Like literally, as soon as I saw this paper, I'm like, I'm starting this. And
Yeah.
every coach is starting this too, because do you know how
Yeah.
long it would take to train, like actually just by running to
Yeah.
get the same results? It would be
Mm-hmm.
way more than 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and I'm glad you brought that up because that is a piece that's missing from this paper as well. And I wish they had that because that helps with the application of this information because no one can go out and measure VO2.
Yeah.
Well, we can, but and maybe if you have $5,000 and get a $5,000 piece of equipment and so forth, but it's very hard to measure VO2 during running. But heart rate's very easy. And like you said, heart rate and VO2 are typically very linked.
Yeah.
But I would like to know the heart rate VO2 relationship.
Yeah.
After that, that would have been sort of a real nice application piece for this.
But we have to kind of make that assumption
It's a reasonable assumption, but it would be nice to know how heart rate and VO2 were they still linked at the same, were they still increasing at the same rate?
Yeah, I would have loved to see that too, because as a coach,
yeah,
I look at pace to heart rate ratio all the time.
Let me see who the authors are, because that wouldn't be a bad question to shoot them over. Christian Callow. Yeah, that wouldn't actually be a bad question to shoot the author. And
to me, like once again, coaching, if I see somebody's pace,
yeah,
and their heart rate is lower at the same pace after 6 weeks of training, to me, they've gotten better.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
No, totally. No, that's right. Yeah.
And it's interesting. Sometimes I have a hard time, not a hard time, but explaining that to people, especially maybe they didn't race very well. And then I say, but look at your pace to heart rate.
Yeah.
Like your heart rate was lower at the same pace.
You
didn't go any faster, but we're making improvements here.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other factors that could go into it, but I still think that that's always a win. And we've talked about it before, even like, one of the things I'm always looking at is heart rate and power on the bike. If you can get 200 watts and your heart rate is 130 or 200 watts and your heart rate is 170, it's a totally different ball game.
Yep.
It's a good metric for fitness. And this is very similar, even though we don't have heart rate, the VO2 does kind of tell us.
Yeah, heart rate. We use heart rate as a proxy for VO2. We do. And so, no, you're spot on with that.
So anything else you want to add on this paper?
Yeah, I'm gonna push doing this in the water.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that myself. I'm like, especially like you get to like some waist deep water. I think that it'd be if you want to even progress it a little slower, starting with waist deep water, and building up time. I think would be a really good thing to do. Could we do this with an unweighting treadmill? Yeah, we could, right?
It depends on your support structure. I don't know.
I'm thinking. So for me, like I have a lever. I could even lever up and progress even slower if I want.
Does it give you enough vertical play? And
it might give you a little bit of vertical. So I think that there's some things we can do. The other thing I'm going to add is there's a lot of hype around plyometrics and running, but most of it tends to be a lot more aggressive than this.
Yeah.
Like box jumps and doing all these, very fancy protocols around it. And I've done some research on that stuff too. And there's some good stuff, but to me, this is once again, bang for the buck and risk of injury. I think risk of injury on this is relatively low compared to doing traditional, we consider like true, this is plyometrics, but plyometrics.
Well, and that's exactly why we're looking at doing this in the water. So I'm a big advocate of shallow water plyometrics. Not only can you do double leg jumps, you can do single leg jumps. And some of the work that we did years ago, we looked at how active muscles were while doing shallow water plyometrics like this.
Yep.
In essence, the muscle activity was the same, but we were having people jump as high as they could, sort of like this study. So, max is max. But the idea was that you could, at that point, we were interpreting that as you can still stimulate the muscle the way you want to stimulate it, but you reduce the risk of impact,
Yep.
any injury associated with that. And that's one of the things that we always talk about plyometrics as a risk, is just that pounding.
Yep.
This paper, however, really shows you don't need that much. And so doing more probably does not mean necessarily more bang for your buck. More may actually mean, watch out, you might be having a problem down the road.
Yeah.
But doing it in shallow water, we're about to do another study this semester, trying to replicate what we did before.
Yeah.
And just interested in, and I've seen some training studies of plyometrics in the waters, and they have demonstrated some benefit for on land performance.
Yeah. So if you're going to do this, if you're following along and you're going to do this, if you want to kind of get a demonstration of what it is, there's a lot of YouTube videos on, they call them pogo jumps. So just do a search for pogo, pogo jumps. And that's if you kind of envision what this is. And really the key is with the pogo jump or doing this is trying to go as high as you can, but get off the ground as quick as you can. So we talked about with running before, ground contact time. You want to get the least amount of ground contact time while going as high as you can go without bending your knees very much. So if you want to get a video, look at pogo jumps.
Good stuff. I'm glad you found this paper.
Yeah, me too. I was excited when I came across it. I want to add one little other thing. You know, when you read a paper and they've got, oh, if you like this paper, click on this one.
Oh, yeah. Okay, what'd you click on?
So I clicked on one that was basically, it was pretty fun. It was still in Nature, and it was basically a way to not get sore after racing. And I'm like, okay, so do you want to know the secret?
Okay.
It's 30 minutes of downhill running about 3 weeks before.
Oh, okay.
So, and get really, really sore to the point where you can't walk for a couple of days. And then your body attenuates to that. And then when you race, you don't get sore afterwards.
Yeah.
So like, so do I want to be sore now or do I want to be sore later?
Yeah, right.
It was just, I don't know. I just thought I got a kick out of reading it, and I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, and some of the soreness, it is there is a brain element to that. So
yeah. I don't know. I always, I don't know. I'm sure you're the same as me. I get down these rabbit holes on these papers. I read one and then I look, oh, they reference this. Let me read this one.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, it's fun, it's super fun to do, but 2 hours later, like where did I start?
I know. Yes.
But it's still fun to do. Awesome.
Good stuff.
Right, good stuff. Hey, hope you start feeling better. John's a little bit cold. Thanks for jumping on tonight. Appreciate it.
I jumped on, and maybe I need to do a little hopping while I can't do much else. So.
Hop on.
Yeah.
That's what we should have. We should have took a break. We should have done 5 minutes where we actually took a break for 10 seconds, hopped, and then came back.
That's right.
That wouldn't be good for a podcast. Wouldn't
right.
We'd have to alternate who's hopping.
Oh, there you go.
So we'll do next time.
Hey, have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
All right, talk soon.